Hey, hello, good morning, dear audience. It is my heartfelt passion and thrilling excitement to present an enthralling talk and lecture on the commentary and literary criticism of the postmodernist novelist Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own. It is my gratitude to read particularly the annotated text and an introductory preface by Mary Gordon, who is an American writer and the Mackintosh Professor of English at Barnard College. She is best known for her novels, memoirs, and literary criticism. So I've got this Virginia Woolf's edition, A Room of One's Own, with an introduction by Mary Gordon. 4:4 Forward. Virginia Woolf foresaw with clarity the responses to A Room of One's Own. She wrote in her diary in 1929, "I forecast then that I shall get no criticism except of the evasive jocular kind, that the press will be kind and talk of its charm and sprightliness. Also I shall be attacked for a feminist, and hinted at for a sophist. I shall get a good many letters from young women. I am afraid it will not be taken seriously. It is a trifle, I shall say, so it is, but I wrote it with ardor and conviction. You feel the creature arching its back and galloping on, though as usual much is watery and flimsy and pitched in too high a voice. As usual, Woolf's standards for herself were mercilessly high. A trifle? Hardly. Yet it is easy to see why it was, by some critics so perceived. Originally given as lectures at Newnham and Girton colleges, A Room of One's Own was published in October 1929 at a time when feminist writing was so little in vogue as to be effectively moribund, when the feminist movement connected as it had come to be almost exclusively with female suffrage, considered its work finished. October 1929. It is astonishing to contemplate that A Room of One's Own fell into the hands of the London literary public at the same time that Wall Street investors were leaping from their windows in despair. Understandably, the political attentions of the intellectuals were turned not to the problems of women, but to economic and world crisis. The name of Mussolini is spoken by Woolf in this essay, but his presence is peripheral, it is like eclipsed by his brother, the college beadle, chasing women from lawns, forbidding them the library. Hmm. A Room of One's Own opened Woolf up to the charges. Snobbery and aestheticism, by that time habitually laid at the Bloomsbury gate by the generation that came of age in the late twenties. To an extent, the accusations are just. Woolf is concerned with the fate of women, of genius, not with that of ordinary women. Her plea is that we create a world in which Shakespeare's sister might survive her gift, not one in which a miner's wife can have her rights to property. So her passion is for literature, not for universal justice. The thesis of a room of one's own, women must have money and privacy in order to write, is inevitably connected to questions of class. Genius like Shakespeare's is not born among laboring, uneducated, servile people. The words are hard. How infuriating they must have been to say, D.H. Lawrence. But Woolf is firm. Genius needs freedom. It cannot flower if it is encumbered by fear or rancor or dependency, and without money, freedom is impossible. And the money cannot be earned. It must come to the writer in the form of a windfall or a legacy, or it will bring with it attachments and obligations. Woolf's sense of the writer's vocation is religious in its intensity, the clarity of heart and spirit that she attributes to writers like Shakespeare and Jane Austen, who have expressed their genius whole and entire, demands a radical lack of self that might be required of a saint. Yet the writer cannot, for Woolf, walk to be rid of the self. The writer must be born into a world which never allows grievances to appear, or must be born of a soul made of stuff that will not bear the impress of resentment. When the writer's personal grievances intrude, the earth is muddied, cracked. It is for the fault Woolf finds with Charlotte Bronte, the woman who wrote those pages of Jane Eyre had more genius in heart than Jane Austen. But if one reads them over and and marks that jerk in them, that indignation, one sees that she will never get her genius expressed whole and entire. She will write in a rage where she should write calmly. She will write foolishly where she should write wisely. She will write of herself where she should write her of her characters. Serenity, selflessness, freedom from rage, the words recall the mystics' counsels. Yet unlike the mystics with their dualistic bias, Woolf finds the body good, the senses delightful. They feed, they do not distract the spirit. One cannot think well, love well, sleep well if one has not dined well. She insists. Her joy in sensual satisfaction is magnificently expressed in her description of the lunch at the Oxbridge Men's College. It is one of the immortal meals in literature. Of its aftermath, she writes, "No need to hurry, no need to sparkle, no need to be anybody but oneself. We are all going to heaven, and Van Dyke is of the company." How good life seemed, how sweet its rewards, how trivial this grudge or that grievance, how admirable friendship and the society of one's kind, as lighting a good cigarette, one sunk among the cushions in the window seat. Woolf says that we who live after the First World War have lost something beautiful, some necessary grace. We do not hum under our breaths. We are cats without tails. We are encumbered by our anger, our sense of doom, more important, perhaps by our sexual self-consciousness. The war destroyed illusions, particularly for men. Women have for Woolf how unrealistically hopeful her illusion, given up their roles as looking glasses, possessing the magic and delicious power of reflecting the figure of man at twice its natural size. Therefore, men are angry. Woolf sees this anger in everything she reads about women. When she begins her quest to discover why women are so poor, their college serves stringy beef, custard, and prawns, why so few women have written. The first question provides an easy answer. Women are poor because instead of making money, they have had children. The second question is far more complex, and her attempt to answer it leads her to history. She reads the lives of women and concludes that if a woman were to have written, she would have had to overcome enormous circumstances. Women were betrothed in their cradles, they were married at 15, they bore a dozen children, and those children died and they went on bearing children. Moreover, they were uneducated, they had no privacy. Even Jane Austen had to write in the common sitting room and hide her work under blotting paper so as not to be discovered. Yet even when they were freed from the practical impediments imposed upon their sex, they could not write because they had no tradition to follow. No sentence had been shaped by long labor to express the experience of women. It is useless to go to the great men writers for help, however much one may go to them for pleasure. They have never helped a woman yet, though she may have learned a few tricks of them and adapted them to her use. Of all women writers, only Jane Austen found a sentence to feed her. The shapely sentence, it is another necessary legacy, the lack of which makes every woman writer parvenu. For Woolf is certain that the experience of men and the experience of women are extremely different, and they need different sentences to contain the shapes of their experience. Women's writings has in addition been impoverished by the limited access women have to life. What could the writings of George Eliot have been like, she wonders, had Miss Evans fought in the Crimea? What would the work of Tolstoy have been had he lived in seclusion in a suburb with a woman not his wife? Yet the hiddenness, the anonymity of women's lives has endowed them with a great beauty, and the challenge Woolf gives to women writers is to capture these lives in all their variety. All these infinitely obscure lives remain to be recorded, I said, and went on in thought through the streets of London, feeling in imagination the presence of dumbness, the accumulation of unrecorded life, whether from the women at the street corners with their arms akimbo, or from the violet sellers and the match sellers and the old crones stationed on the doorways, or from drifting girls whose faces like waves in sun and cloud signal the coming of men and women. Above all, you must illumine your own soul with its profundities and its shallows and its vanities and its generosities, and say what your beauty means to you or to your plainness. And what is your relation to the ever changing and turning world of gloves and shoes, and stop swaying up and down among the faint scents that came through chemists' bottles, down arcades of dress material over a floor of pseudo marble? This is, indeed, a challenge whose proportions are heroic. The novelist imagined by Woolf a young woman named Mary Carmichael, who has money and privacy, has not achieved in her first book life's adventure, despite The deeply heartening sentences like Co- Chloe liked Olivia. They shared a laboratory together. Miss Carmichael is a good novelist. She writes with spirit. She has many new and interesting things to say, but she is not a genius. Given her tradition, how can she but awkward? And without the unturn of the pen of a thackeray, or a lamb delightful to the ear, Woolf lays down life's adventure with disappointment, saying she will be a poet in another 100 years' time. She turns to the window and sees a man and a woman getting into a taxi. This sight she finds so immensely attractive, so profoundly soothing, that it reminds her how unnatural it is to think of the sexes as separate, how natural to think of them as cooperating with one another. And it leads her to speculate that just as there are two sexes in the natural world, there must be two sexes in the mind, and that is, it's their union that is responsible for creation. She recalls Coleridge's idea that a great mind is androgynous. Coleridge certainly did not mean that it is a mind that has any special sympathy with women, a mind that takes up their cause or devotes itself to their interpretation. Perhaps the androgynous mind is less apt to make these distinctions than the single-sexed mind. He meant, perhaps, that the androgynous mind is resonant and porous, that it transmits emotion without impediment, that it is naturally creative, incandescent, and undivided. The androgynous mind must be a pure vessel. We are back once more to the important idea of purity for the transmission of reality. What remains over when the skin of the day has been cast into the hedge? What is left of past time and our loves and hates? But it is particularly difficult for the modern to transmit reality. Modern women are frustrated and angry, their experience is limited. Modern men are obsessed with the letter I. Their writing is full of self-conscious indecency, self-conscious virility. It is essentially sterile. Thus, unless men and women can be androgynous in mind, literature itself will be permanently flawed, and this is the reason for Woolf's insistence on a pound 500 a year and rooms of their own for women. It is not that she wants women to write better than men. All this pleading of sex against sex, all this claiming of superiority and imparting of inferiority belong to the private school stage of human existence, where there are sides and it is of the utmost importance to walk up to a platform and receive from the hands of the headmaster himself a highly ornamental pot. It is to encourage writing of genius, to discourage flawed work, that Woolf is so insistent upon money and privacy for women. And by whom are these works to be created? Okay, but by Shakespeare's sister, the imaginary woman invented by Woolf, who killed herself because of the frustration of unexpressed genius. If we face the fact that there is no arm to cling to, but that we go alone, and that our relation is to the world of reality, and not only to the world of men and women, then the dead poet, who was Shakespeare's sister, will put on the body which she has so often laid down. Was he the body of Shakespeare's sister that Virginia Woolf laid down when she walked into the river? The tone of a room of one's own discourages the speculation. It is an exalted tone, an inspired tone. There is nothing petty in it, and nothing of the merely personal. Human happiness, the happiness of writers, questions by which we in our age seemed enthralled, do not enter these pages. What is important, what is essential, is that works of genius be created, in that writers' unhappiness interferes with their creation. One should be concerned with the happiness of the writers. The important thing is that they must express reality. Okay? They must express their genius, not themselves. They must illuminate their own souls. Okay? But they must not allow the souls to get in the way of reality, for pitted against re- reality, against the great tradition of immortal literature, the self is funny. It is of no interest. The tone of a room of one's own is exalted, but it is also conversational. A human voice provides its music a voice of great charm. It came to be written because Virginia Woolf was asked to lecture at women's colleges on the subject of women and fiction. Her interest in the subject was vital. She had felt cheated in her education, and she felt the cheat for all those who had gone before her. She was as angry in some ways as Charlotte Bronte. But there was another reason for the writings of this book. When one thinks of that reason, one that likes to think of Virginia Woolf not for the moment, the Olympian virgin of the early portrait, or the august woman of letters of the late ones, but the woman in one of the snapshots. Her legs are crossed, there is a dog at her feet. She looks friendly, she may be approachable. It is November of 6, and it is of in 1629. She is writing to her friend G. Lowes Dickinson, explaining the reason for a room of one's own. I wanted to encourage the young women. They seem to get fearfully depressed. Mary Gordon.